So, going back to the book here, when he's initially in the Army and what they're doing, and he talks about what they were doing at this time. It was pretty dull soldiering down there in the South. The regiment was broken up into companies or small battalions, and our job was to smash the Ku Klux Klan and run down illicit whiskey distillers. It wasn't much fun for energetic, spirited young men. And now he's going to talk a little bit about the 7th Cavalry. As I say, the 7th Cavalry was only 7 years old in 1873, but it had a fine reputation. Everybody in the country knew General Custer. And he was always bragging about what a fine fighting regiment he had. He was supposed to be the best Indian fighter in the American Army. In the Civil War, they'd called him the Boy General. And he'd been a dashing, popular figure. The regiment had spent its first 4 years of its life on the Kansas Plains and in Indian Territory. The old-timers in the outfit could sure tell some blood-curdling Indian stories. They used to say that it was worse than straight death to get captured by the Indians because you would be slowly tortured until you gave up the ghost. They told all of us young soldiers if we were ever wounded in an Indian fight and left behind and in danger of being captured, that we must save our last cartridge to blow out our brains. So that's an interesting point when we remember Wooden Leg said that all the guys in Custer's group ended up killing themselves.
Huh.
And maybe that very well might have happened.
Mm.
Or at least some of them.
Yeah.
Back to the book. By the spring of 1873, the Plains Indians had been largely debased, beaten and driven to the great reservations that had been allotted to the various tribes. It had not been a deliberate government policy, but it had been a cruelly effective one. Treaty after treaty had been broken by the relentless pressure of white men and their civilization, constantly pushing against the ineffective resistance of the red men. Now and again, the Indians had struck back, and as a rule, their angry flare-ups were put down by the army, and then new and drastic treaties would be made and more land taken from them in punishment. The ink would hardly be dry on these new government commitments before the white pressure would be resumed, intrusions made, and once again the bewildered, enraged Indians would strike back only to be subdued by the army and harsh penalties imposed on them. It was a deadly and vicious cycle the Indian found himself whirling endlessly in. So, yeah, that's reminds me of a lot of conflicts where you have these things happen. You know, the white man is putting pressure on the Indians. The Indians don't know what's going on, so they lash out a little bit. What do the white men do then? Go in there, smash them, take more land from them, compress them more. Eventually, there's another lash out, and you just get this vicious cycle. Vicious cycle.